What I'm going to go through is a few examples of graphing absolute value graphs and also show you a method that we can use in a second. I'm going to first go through just using the table of values to figure out what the graph looks like, and then we're going to move on from there. Okay, so let's have a look. This is the first example and it's in your booklet. I'm not going to do part A because we haven't looked at that quite yet, and we'll get to that in further part in our not sure in this topic, but maybe a little bit further on. What we're going to do is we're going to graph y is equal to x minus 2, the absolute value of x minus 2 by using a table of values. Now we've done, I should have said this before, but if you're graphing these types of graphs, you can always use a table of values just to check where your graph is going to be and what a few values are. So let's use a table of values to find what y is equal to absolute value of x minus 2 is equal to. So I'm going to draw my table of values. I'm going to start from -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go all the way up to 4. Okay, so let's substitute a few points in just to figure out what the y values are. So let's start with -2. Now let's put in -2 into our absolute value. So here we've got -2, where we're replacing x with -2, and we're subtracting 2. So what's -2 minus 2? That'll give me -4. I take the absolute value of that. And when I take the absolute value, if it's a negative number, I just flip it to get the magnitude. So I have a 4 here. So for this first value, I've got 4. Next one, -1 minus 2. So that gives me -3. When I take the absolute value of -3, I just get 3. So here I've got 3. Now hopefully, once I do the next one, you start noticing a pattern. When I do 0, I'm going to do 0 minus 2. That gives me -2. Absolute value was just 2. Next one is, hopefully you'll notice there's a pattern. So then the next one is just going to be 1, and 2, when x is equal to 2, they'll just give me 0. Now I'm going to do x is equal to 3 just to show you what happens. So what happens when x is equal to 3? Let's substitute that value in. I'm going to do it over here. 3 minus 2, absolute value of that. Well, what's 3 minus 2? 3 minus 2 is just 1. And so what's the absolute value of 1? The absolute value of 1 is going to be 1. And so we notice here that when x is equal to 2, we've got this like low point. That's like the tip of my v. And so at x is equal to 2, we've got that tip. Or that kind of like tip of the v. Okay, I'm going to do the last one just to check. 4 minus 2 absolute value. So that's 4 minus 2 is 2. Absolute value of 2 is just going to give me 2. And so using that, I can graph my, I can graph my absolute value function. So let's graph that underneath here. So I'm going to draw my Cartesian plane. I'm going to draw my y a little bit to the left just to show this. Okay, so when I'm going to look at a few key points and just plot them on. So when x is equal to 0, I've got y is equal to 2. And so let me put that on here. X is equal to 0, y is equal to 2. I'm going to put this 4, 5, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and I've got -1, -2. Okay, cool. So at the other point that I was looking at is when x is equal to 0, I've got, when x is equal to 2, y is equal to 0, which is just down here. I'm going to chuck on an extra point at 4, 2, just so it lines up with that first point. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so we've got our 3 points. I'm just going to line them up and draw the line that goes through it. So, let's see if I can draw this accurately. I can. Here we go. And so, this is what my absolute value function looks like. So this is y is equal to x minus 2, absolute value of that. Okay, cool. So this is how we can graph an absolute value function. We can check the, with an absolute value function, you can check a table of values just to see where those points are. Okay, so that's part B of this question. Part C asks us to find the equation of the 2 branches. So as I highlighted here, our absolute value functions are made up of 2 branches. We've got 2 sides of our absolute function which makes that v. We want to find the equation of both these sides. Now here, let's have a look. Well, what do we know is going to be the condition for my absolute value function? So I've got absolute value of x is x minus 2. Well, if you notice, the tip point is kind of where this condition happens, because that is where we've got this v down along this middle line here. If you look at my equation, my absolute function that I've drawn here, the v isn't at 0. The tip of the v isn't at 0, but it's actually at x is equal to 2. So our condition at the end of our for our two branches, it's not going to be for x is greater than or equal to 0 or x is less than 0. It's going to be x is greater than 2 and x is less than 2, because those are the two sides. On this side, we've got one graph, and this is for x is greater than or equal to 2. And for this side, we've got another graph, which is for x is less than 2, which is this cutoff point in the middle. Hopefully you can see that. If you need to go back and just have a look at why I got that cutoff point, feel free to. If you need to ask questions, more than happy to answer them. What we want to do now is we want to look at the equation of each of these lines. Now, let's have a look at this one over here on the right-hand side. This green one. Now, the gradient of this is going to be the exact same. This is just going to be the positive version of what's in the brackets. So here, I just want to take the positive version of what's inside my absolute values, which is x minus 2. So on the right-hand side, we've got x minus 2. That's what this line on the right-hand side, this side, is going to be. That's going to be y is equal to x minus 2. And which is exactly what we had over here. The blue side on my absolute value of x is just my positive version of y is equal to the absolute value of x. Now on the negative side, we've got the negative version of that exact same graph. So here on the left-hand side, this side over here, that's just a negative version of the exact same thing inside my absolute value. So over here, that's just going to be negative x minus 2. And so what I'm just going to expand that bracket, or negative x plus 2. So that's what my absolute value of x minus 2 is made up of. We've got these two branches, which is made up of x minus 2 when x is greater than or equal to 2, which is this side over here. And then on the other side, we've got negative x plus 2, which is for the left-hand side of x is equal to 2, which is on this side over here. So that's how we do this first question here.